Hi, friends. Welcome to CORELIGHT'S Spiritual Weather Report. It is January 21st, 2024, and this is Brad, and I'm calling today from beautiful Blythe River Canyon, South Africa. I've been having such a joyful reunion here with my beloved Leslie the past couple of months. It's been a total delight to be here in this magical place. And if you're sensitive to energy, I hope you can feel the energy of Blythe River Canyon, South Africa coming through my words today, and that you can enjoy it with me. It is truly a very powerful and special place. Before we begin our session today, I want to welcome everybody who's new to CORELIGHT, and welcome to all of our old friends too. For those who are new, every month I tune in on what's happening in the collective consciousness, and I'm always shown a few themes to talk about on these calls. And I felt very, very strongly this month to talk about the exponential change that's going to be happening in 2024, both in collective consciousness and also manifesting in the physical world. I don't know about you, but so many people I know are feeling it and talking about it, and I touched on it last month in the December call when I asked inwardly last month in meditation to be shown, what can we expect in 2024? I was given a very clear image of a roller coaster. And a roller coaster is a very interesting image. It's ups and downs. It is both fun and scary, thrilling, challenging, all at the same time. And so I love that image, and I love that it's a ride. It reminds us that that's what this life is. We are on a ride. And the ride is all a part of schoolroom Earth, which is like being in the Matrix or on the holodeck of the Starship Enterprise in Star Trek. And those movies, well, Star Trek was a TV show, but you know what I mean. Those movies are fantastic reminders that this world is an illusion and that these bodies are not who we truly are. We are spiritual beings having a human experience, and we can get off the ride anytime we want. And the way we do that is, of course, through all the spiritual practices that we know. And that's why I offer these podcasts every month, to talk about all these practices that help us to navigate these times of change. Anyway, I don't want to get too far ahead of myself here, so the exponential change that's happening this year is very clearly being demonstrated in the astrology. So much of it is about Pluto moving out of Capricorn and into Aquarius. And I don't often talk about astrology on these calls because I'm not an astrologer, but I do value it very much. I know the importance of it, and the guidance was super clear this month that I should invite our longtime friend and colleague and master astrologer, Stephanie Austin, to join me today on the call. And many of you know Stephanie because she's been a guest speaker on our spiritual weather reports several times before. She's a world-renowned professional astrologer with a very awakened perspective. And Leslie and I have known her for probably 3 decades now or so. So I'll be introducing Stephanie a little bit later, but for now, I'd just like to welcome Stephanie and say that I'm very excited about this call today because we're going to be having a very inspiring dialogue about how the planets are influencing such a massive shift in human consciousness and what that means for us individually, and what we can be doing in a very practical way to navigate the ups and downs of the year ahead, this roller coaster ride, which is sure to be both exciting and fun and, an amazing gift and an opportunity for all of us, as well as sometimes a bit scary and probably challenging. So I'll open up to Stephanie in just a little bit after we've had our guided meditation. But today, let me mention the themes that we're going to talk about. The main theme, as I said, is exponential change in 2024, and that is Pluto in Aquarius. Another theme is standing up for truth. Another one is redefining spirituality. The next one is claiming our positive potentials. The next one is being aware of and clearing current shadow aspects. Another one is transcending power struggles. And another one is choosing joy over fear. So for anybody who's new to these calls, I start by offering a guided meditation, and then normally it's just me, but this time Stephanie and I will speak about the prevailing energies that are affecting us and also about the spiritual principles that are most helpful for us right now. And then we'll have time for questions and answers. And then we'll close the session with a brief guided meditation or a prayer or whatever we have time for. And if you need to leave before the call ends, you can always listen to the recording later. We do send out the link to our email list, and it's also posted on YouTube. And before we start with our guided meditation, just a few housekeeping items, some updates for you. Just in case you're not on our email list, or if you are but didn't happen to see this, a few days ago I sent a group email sharing that Leslie's and my book, The Marriage of Spirit, is now available in paperback. Super excited. It's been hardcover for 23 years, and the hardcover is now sold out. So we're very, very excited to offer it now in an abridged paperback form. You can find it at CORELIGHT.org on our bookstore. It's also going to be available soon on Amazon and all other major booksellers. It's also available as an audiobook at CORELIGHT.org, and like the paperback soon, that will also be available at all the major booksellers. Another thing I wanted to mention is that my online course that I'm co-teaching with Anna Breitenbach, our dear friend and colleague, For the Love of Animals, is very, very close to being ready. In case you don't know Anna, she, like I said, Leslie and I have known her for a very long time. She's known as the animal communicator. And we're planning on announcing our course in February. I'm really sorry. I thought it would be available in January, but we're just not quite ready, and we want it to be perfect for you. So if you want to know about that course, you can find out about it on our Sacred Activism page at CORELIGHT.org. You go to the main menu to Sacred Activism, and then you can choose the sub-menu item called Interspecies Communication. And then you can just scroll down the page a little bit, and there's a little 2-minute video there about the course. But soon there's going to be a full landing page with a lot more about the course, and that'll be announced soon, as I said. Another little thing to mention is I'm very honored to be invited for an interview on the online show called Buddha at the Gas Pump. And that's going to be a week from today, January 28th. So we'll send out an announcement about that, and you can either join live or watch the recording. It'll be on YouTube. It'll be on the Buddha at the Gas Pump site. It's BATGAP, BATGAP.com. I think .com or .org. I can't remember. They invited me, and they said, you can invite Anna Breitenbach to join you if you want. And I did. So Anna accepted, and we're going to be doing the interview together, which will be super exciting. So please look for the email about that if you care to join us on that call. I'm super excited about this. We just finished revamping our Spiritual Weather Report archive page. So now it's easier to find past topics. We added a main theme for each one and the list of highlights for each one so that you can kind of navigate through the page and just quickly see when it was offered and what it's about. And pretty soon we're also going to add timestamps and transcripts so that it's really easy to go, if you want to just listen to one particular topic, it'll be easy to navigate to that. You can find that page on our main menu at CORELIGHT'S.org under Free Resources. And the submenu item is called Monthly Podcast Archive. So I hope the new format's helpful. We did it with the intention to serve you better, to make these more accessible. Lastly, the very last thing, and last but not least, I would like to request from you, please, feedback. I would love it if you could give me feedback about these spiritual weather reports. It helps me. Your feedback really helps me to tune up every month, and so I'd like to know if you have, I don't know, special input of any kind, whether it's criticism or something you especially like, or questions, or whatever it happens to be, sharing of any kind. Please send me anything you care to send. Courses@corelight.org. It really does help me a lot to hear from you, and I do read everything. I don't have an opportunity always to answer everybody, but I do read everything. So thank you in advance for anything you care to share. All right, without further ado, let's have our guided meditation. I invite you now to get comfortable and just relax and take a few long, slow, deep breaths. Breathing in all the light and life force that surrounds you, and breathing out any tension you're holding on to in your body. Breathing in peace, breathing out stress. Breathing in the present moment, and breathing out any worries about the past or the future. Breathing in joy. Breathing out any shadow. And let's now, as you continue to breathe, do a muscular relaxation from head to toes, as we always do every month. Physical relaxation is so important, and we forget about that. And it begins with breathing. So continuing long, slow, deep breathing, letting go with each exhale, letting go of any stress in the body. Just allowing deep peace to enter your body as you relax. The foundation of the enlightening of our consciousness is physical relaxation. And we often are too busy to take the time to do it. So I invite you to give yourself the gift of this time where we just take a few minutes just to pause and relax. So I invite you to feel a very warm, viscous liquid like honey pouring over the top of your head, relaxing all the muscles that it touches, relaxing your whole scalp, feeling it pouring down over your forehead and your ears and the back of your head, relaxing all those muscles. Feel it pouring over your eyebrows and your eye sockets, pouring over your temples, your cheeks, your nose, your mouth, the back of your neck, your jaw. Just relaxing the entire head area. Focus for a moment, just especially on the eyes. Just feel this warmth of this liquid, completely relaxing your eyelids and all the many, many little muscles around the eyes. It's a place where we hold on to a lot of tension. Relaxing your eyeballs. So much that the eyeballs just relax and fall back into their sockets. completely letting go. And focus for a moment also on the back of the tongue. It's a place where it's one of the centers of the body, and if you can just allow that place a deep sense of peace and relaxation, the whole region of the body relaxes. And feel the warm liquid continuing to pour over your shoulders, down your arms, all the way down to your fingertips, sweeping away any tension being held in the arms, especially the wrists. With all the typing on devices we all do nowadays, we have these tense wrists. So just allow your wrists to completely let go, and your hands and your fingers as well. Just relax completely. And also the shoulders. Feel the warmth, this warm liquid pouring over your shoulders, allowing all the tension we hold there to let go. Remembering to breathe long and slow and deep. Releasing all the tension with each exhale. And feel this warm liquid pouring over your chest, down your back. Just giving you a sense of deep, deep peace and relaxation throughout your whole torso, pouring over your diaphragm, mid-back, the stomach, and the lower back. And let's take a long, deep breath, breathing light into the top of the head, all the way down to the stomach. And with the exhale, release any tension being held in the abdomen area, the diaphragm, abdomen, the organs. Let's do a few of those breaths. Breathing light into the top of the head, opening up the crown, and feeling that golden white light pouring in all the way down to the stomach. And then with an exhale, release all the tension in the torso. And one more. Breathing light in through the top of the head, opening the crown, all the way down to the stomach. And then releasing. And with the exhale, feel all the tension in the whole upper body, above the waist, just releasing and letting go. And now I invite you to feel this warm liquid pouring down over your hips, your whole pelvic region, genitals, buttocks, hips, down your legs, all the way down past the knees, down the lower legs, ankles, feet, and toes. Just feel this warm, beautiful, loving energy sweeping you clear and clean of any stress, any tension in the body. And while you continue to breathe, I'll be quiet for a few moments while you scan your body from head to toes, just breathing light into any areas where there still might be some tension, and just feeling it release with each exhale. Feeling this sense of deep, deep peace entering the body, deep quiet and stillness, tranquility. And now I invite you to put your attention on the core of light that runs right down the center of your body from top of the head at the fontanelle all the way down to the perineum, the base of the spine, a spot between the anus and the genitals. So just, even if you're not sensitive to energy, or if you feel you're not aware of this part of your subtle body, you can just visualize it. That it's like a fluorescent tube of light that runs right down the center of your body, right in front of the spine. And it's the luminous core of enlightenment within each one of us. When we put our attention there, it's like a still point. It's like the eye of the hurricane. The world can be so frenetic and spins around us. And when that happens, it's so helpful and so important to remember this exercise of finding the core, just putting our attention there and remembering that that's who we truly are. We are that core energy. It's love, it's light, it's literally our enlightenment. And so just feel that, attune to it. And sometimes you feel it just as a thread. It can feel just like a little thread that runs down the center of the body, and sometimes it's so tenuous that you think it's not there, but do attune to it and you'll feel it there. And the more we practice attuning to the core, the larger it grows, it expands. And this is the subtle physical body's representation of what we call the witness. That part of us that is the objective observer. It's always aware of us doing the personality, of us living life, aware of our thoughts, aware of our emotions. And that's literally, it resides right here in the core. So just hold that alignment and see if you can allow that core to become wide like a fluorescent light, like the diameter of a quarter or even a penny, a small coin of some kind. See if you can feel and visualize that. Fully, all the way from crown to root. And it doesn't matter if you can or you can't, if you're aware or you're not aware. It really doesn't matter. Just this is a practice. So no need to judge yourself or beat yourself up if you feel like you're not doing it right or anything. It's not about that. Just a practice. So now I invite you to drop that core energy in the form of your grounding cord down through your root, out the perineum, all the way down into the earth. Feeling it going all the way down to the center of the earth, connecting with the core of the earth, commingling your energy with earth energy, and then drawing that earth energy back up into your body, all the way up through the soles of your feet, all the way up the body, up the core, all the way up to the top of the head. And then send that same energy in the form of the core. Send it out the top of the head, all the way out into the formless cosmos. And connect with your essence in the form of universal energy. And that can be anything you choose to make it. It can look like a spiral galaxy or a group of celestial beings or a star. But whatever it is, it's your core energy. It's the essence that we are all part of. It's the divine flame that we are all sparks of. The universal source of energy. And then draw that universal source of energy down into your body, down through the top of the head, all the way down into the core. And as you do this, just pause for a moment and feel how your physical body is the center point between heaven and earth, matter and spirit, above and below. And let's just take a moment to honor these precious, precious physical bodies that we get to wear for a few years. Beautiful, beautiful bodies, miraculous bodies that give us the gift of experience here in schoolroom earth. So just take a moment to thank your body. Let it know how precious you think it is, how much you love it, how much you appreciate it, gratitude that you feel for it. You feel the sense of love building in your heart. It's the love of matter and spirit, heaven and earth. And as you hold this sense of peace and love and gratitude, I'm going to say a little prayer and an invocation for our call today. We call on Great Spirit, Divine Mother, Father God, the self that we all are. We give thanks for this opportunity to be here today, to share our love with each other. And when we say be here today, we also mean anybody who's listening in the quote-unquote future. At this level, there is no such thing as time and space, so we are all here together. You're just in a future now. So we're grateful for this community, whatever linear time we happen to be tuning in. It's all in the same moment right now. So we're grateful for this field of love that we share, for these beautiful bodies we get to wear for a few years, and for this beautiful, beautiful planet that we get to inhabit, that we get to ride this roller coaster ride through. Chills and spills and thrills. So let's take this another moment before we start our conversation for today. Just take a moment to send loving thoughts and prayers to all in this world who are in pain and suffering, especially those who are affected by war. All life forms, humans and the whole of the rest of the natural world. All who suffer from illness or hunger, poverty, lack of any kind, loss of loved ones, grief. We send our love and comfort and peace to all life. We pray for peace. We pray for an end to all war on this planet. And we ask that you please make us instruments of peace. Wherever there is war, may we sow peace and love. And we ask for protection and inspiration for those who are working for universal peace on this planet. We surround them in our love and gratitude. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And so it is. So guide our conversation today, please, into the highest love and the highest wisdom. Hold our hands as we walk this path out into the world, into our soul's highest purpose. Wrap us up in a beautiful cocoon of golden white light and love and healing energy. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Alalaho. Isn't it wonderful? And now, when you feel ready, I invite you to slowly bring your awareness back into your body, slowly begin to wiggle your fingers and toes, and gradually open your eyes. Okay. Well, thank you, everybody. Thank you for being part of this field of love. I can feel your energy so beautifully. I hope you can feel it as well. There's just such a beautiful field of love we create together. So I thank you for, whether you're listening live or in the future, you are part of this field of love, and I'm grateful to you. Okay, well, let's dive in to our discussion for the day. As I mentioned at the beginning of the call, we're going to be talking today about the exponential change that's coming in 2024 and how that's reflected in the current astrology. The main thing being Pluto moving from Capricorn into Aquarius, which officially happened yesterday, actually, Saturday the 20th of January, 2024. It's a big deal. And as I said, I invited Leslie's and my longtime friend and colleague, Stephanie Austin, the master astrologer, to join us today. And I'm going to introduce Stephanie officially by reading something brief about her right now. Stephanie's relationship with astrology traces back to a childhood love of astronomy. Originally a skeptic, she began studying astrology almost 40 years ago in 1985. While in graduate school for a master's degree in consciousness studies, a combination of transpersonal psychology, philosophy, religion, and the new physics. She's a longtime student of Leslie's work, attending many of her retreats, her 4-year teacher training program, and was part of a Golden Orb processing group for 10 years. That's one of CORELIGHT'S things we used to do. She's also had a lifelong involvement with meditation, nature, and healing, and has been a full-time astrologer since 1993. For more on her background and astrological services, you can visit her website at ecoastrology.com. Eco is E-C-O, astrology.com. And I just want to say something about Stephanie from my personal experience, and this is obviously something she would not share herself. She's much more than a master astrologer. She's deeply, deeply wise, very intuitive, and highly spiritually evolved. And so it's from that place that her astrological readings are given. And that's why I invite her on this call, because we resonate at that level. So at the end of the call, I'm going to share with you more about how to work with Stephanie in case you're interested. But I especially recommend getting her yearly forecast, which includes a 2-hour recording and 6 pages of handouts on the major alignments for the year and how to work with them. And I must say, I've been devouring her 2024 forecast. It's incredibly helpful and informative. And that's the whole thing that's inspiring today's conversation, is that 2024 forecast. So if you're interested, go to ecoastrology.com and get that. So welcome, Stephanie. And Stephanie, are you with us?
Yes. Can you hear me?
We can hear you. Welcome.
Okay, great. Thank you.
So thank you for joining us. Would you please begin by just giving a very brief little talk about astrology in general, because I know some listeners are not familiar with it.
Sure. For me, astrology is essentially a language of energy. It reminds us that everything is connected and always changing. We can think of it as a language of light encoded to assist our evolution. It offers us both a calendar and a clock. You know, our basic days, months, and years are based on the cycles of the Earth, the Moon, and the Sun. And so it gives us a sense of what we call mundane time, everyday time, but also a different kind of time, what we might call sacred time, or the Greeks had a word for it, kairos versus chronos. Chronos being everyday time, kairos being more higher dimensional times, looking at cycles. So it helps us to be in time, on time, in tune, in the flow. There's an ever-changing matrix, a sacred geometry that focalizes certain archetypal energies as the planets move against the backdrop of different stars and quadrants in space. So it provides a very useful map, a roadmap, confirmation of validation. I know for me it's helped confirm what I've been sensing but didn't have words to express. So it's a very useful tool.
I agree. Leslie turned me on to astrology many years ago. I was also a skeptic, and then I realized, wow, this stuff is pretty amazing. So that's why I invited you today, because I know knowing about these things, how the planets work, really helps us to navigate the challenges, changes that we're facing. So, Stephanie, please talk about the exponential growth in 2024. What does that look like?
Okay, yeah. I was feeling that energetically, like you and several people I know who are very sensitive to energy too. Like you mentioned, it's definitely coinciding with a major shift with Pluto moving into Aquarius. I think it also corresponds with increasing solar activity that affects our bodies. We can talk about that in a little bit as well. So those would be the two main coordinates or main astrological excuses, so to speak. Jupiter in Gemini later this year will also amplify that. But I think the big thing is this transition from Pluto in Capricorn to Aquarius, because it represents kind of the frontiers of consciousness. Even though Pluto has been reclassified astronomically as a subplanet or a dwarf planet, it still remains a very powerful force and holds a field of consciousness that represents deep shifts, transformative experiences, and which we attain by dealing with the shadow, which of course Leslie's work is so eloquently focused on. So when Pluto changes signs, which only happens every 10 to 30 years, it has a very elliptical orbit, so it varies. There's a very major shift in the archetypal backdrop, and so calls us to look at things at a deeper level, to deeply rewire, revamp, and release what's not working, and to go to the next level. So it represents our evolutionary edges, where we are ripe and ready to make major changes, and where we can expect major endings and beginnings.
Yeah, Pluto is so important to know about, right? It's revealing the unconscious, and there's so much power in that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Could you talk a little bit about exponential growth?
Yeah, Peter Russell, who is a wonderful resource, a very enlightened man, he wrote The Global Brain many years ago, recently did a short video on exponential growth that I found very illuminating. He gave the example of a story where in times long past, a ruler wanted to reward one of his subjects for inventing the game of chess. And so the man asked in exchange to have 1 grain of rice placed on each square of the board. There's 64 squares in a chessboard, but in an exponential way. So on day 1, there would be 1 grain of rice placed on the first one. On day 2, 2 grains. On day 3, 4 grains. On day 4, 16, and so on. And by the end of 64 days, there would be 16 quintillion grains of rice. So it's a number hard to wrap our minds around. Exponential growth is not just a curve going at, a 45-degree angle. It's going almost completely straight up. And so this is the kind of change that we are at the threshold of with technology and with consciousness as well. So it's a very exciting time, but also a very challenging time. So it makes it extra important to stay in touch with our primary intentions, to stay extra grounded and centered, and to be listening for our inner guidance every step of the way.
I agree. In your report, you said that by 2026, all the big outer planets will be changing signs. Can you explain what that means and why that's important, please?
Mm-hmm. Yes. The outer planets are... So one good rule of thumb is the farther a planet is from the sun, the larger the field of consciousness it encompasses. What are called the inner planets, Venus, Mars, Mercury, they move more quickly, so they're more transitory. The outer planets, which I call from Jupiter on out, have much longer orbits, 12, 29, and in Pluto's case, almost 250 years. So they give us more time. They move more slowly through these fields, these quadrants of space. So they represent deeper processes of change. And when they shift from one sign to another, they're closing or kind of taking the spotlight off of one major archetype and bringing it to the next. And astrology is all about cycles. If you know just one thing, the key, I think, to astrology is recognizing that it deals with cycles as opposed to linear time. We live in a very linear, logical, left-brain culture, where we consider time as being a progression from past, present, and future in a line. But astrology starts to tweak our consciousness, starts to help us see that there's another kind of time, which really doesn't have any end, right? It's a continuous flow of energy. But there are also these cycles that are symbolized by the planets. We, of course, orbit around the sun. Our sun orbits around the center of the Milky Way galaxy. Our galaxy, in turn, is orbiting around what's called the local cluster of 27 more galaxies, which in turn orbits around a whole other set of galaxies. So it keeps going on and on. But there are all these cycles. So time represents is a cyclical and spiraling energy. Nothing ever repeats exactly, but there are these themes and patterns and matrices that do tend to have similar orientations. So whenever an outer planet changes signs, we're representing a shift and like a new lesson plan, you could say, a new topic, a new exploration, a new set of challenges, and a new set of qualities to develop.
And because they're all changing signs, that is part of the exponential growth that you're talking about. Is that right?
Yes. Within the next few years, all the outer planets. Jupiter changes signs once a year, so not as big a deal. Saturn changes signs every 2.5 years. Uranus approximately every 7 years. Chiron varies greatly between 6 and 20 years. Neptune changes signs every 164 years. And as I mentioned, Pluto only every 240 years. So this is a big deal when all of these planets shift within a 1 or 2 year period. Represents a lot of endings and beginnings and a lot of thresholds into new territory.
Makes total sense. Let's start with, could you please explain Jupiter moving into Gemini this year?
Okay. Yeah, that's one of the pieces. So Jupiter represents the principle of expansion. It's the largest planet in our solar system. So it represents how we gain perspective, understanding, how we frame things, our beliefs about reality, our sense of what is true. And the sign that it moves through asks us to question pre-existing assumptions and to look at what's true now, what may not have ever been true in the beginning, but what we might have assumed to be true. So looking at our constructs, our view of reality, and our sense of possibilities to stretch and broaden our horizons. The sign that it moves through will give more information as to where we're wanting to be expanding our consciousness and our sense of truth and possibility. So Gemini is the third sign in the zodiac. It's an air sign, the first air sign. So it represents how we perceive information, how we take in, digest, and process and communicate data, how we connect with what's immediately around us. So as Jupiter moves through Gemini, Jupiter being more about meaning, truth, perspective, the big picture, Gemini is more the everyday details and facts. Looking at how we use information. As we know, there can be so many ways to distort and manipulate. We have a whole new vocabulary for misinformation, disinformation, fake news, and so on, which is becoming increasingly problematic. So really shining a big spotlight on that and the necessity of trusting our inner guidance. To be, judicious about reading and exposing ourselves to different sources, to not just accept one source, but to be noticing how does that impact us? Does it make us, does it empower us, or does it put us into fear? That's a really good rule of thumb, especially for this year and the coming years, I think is a good barometer to come back to our inner truth meter, which is in the center of our chest, our heart, and to notice how does that feel when we watch something, when we hear something, especially with major media. Unfortunately, our major media is now owned by only 5 or 6 corporations. And if you switch channels, you'll notice they're pretty much parroting the same words even about the news. It's a very, very narrow beam of light on what's happening in the world, and also a very controlled one. So becoming, and this is amplified, we'll talk about Pluto and Aquarius in a minute, greatly by Pluto as well, going to Aquarius about what's true, what do we believe, what does group think, and what is really happening. So having to increasingly tune inward and to feel into what feels right, what is helpful and empowering versus what is contracting and controlling us.
Okay, that's very clear. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Tell us. I know that you've talked before about when this particular alignment happened before. What are some of the examples of how that played out in previous times, so we have a sense of it? Yeah,
it's always useful to see. Again, we're talking about cycles. So it's useful to look at the previous cycle when Jupiter was last moving through Gemini to get a sense of what came up. It's not going to be the same, of course, but it's a spiral, but the themes will be similar. So Jupiter was last in Gemini from about mid-June 2012 to the end of June 2013. And during that time period, I think one of the best examples of this to illustrate it is Malala Yousafzai, the 14-year-old Pakistani girl who was shot for campaigning for the right for girls to go to school. And then before Jupiter moved out of Gemini, fortunately she survived that she was shot in the head. It was a miracle that she survived. And later in the next year, she addressed the United Nations, calling for worldwide access for education for women. So her courage, her incredible courage to stand up and be a voice for education, for truth. Jupiter also represents higher education, philosophy, religion, and the studies, all the ologies, sociology, psychology, astrology, mythology, that provide perspective. So that was a great example. Also during that time period, Julian Assange was granted political asylum in Ecuador, and Edward Snowden revealed his identity as a leaker of NSA documents during that time. So again, acts of courage to bring forth information that had been hidden and concealed. So we may see more revolutions along those lines. And those are good examples of that. You had some references from movies that you wanted to share around that.
Yes, Stephanie, I'm going to mute you while I say that so the echo doesn't happen, but I'll bring you right back on, okay?
Sure.
I just absolutely loved these examples of Malala and Assange and Snowden because they're all very courageous to do what they did to stand up for truth. And I think Malala also, she was such an inspiration because she also forgave the Taliban for shooting her. And whenever anybody can forgive their oppressor, people like Gandhi and Mandela and others, they become heroes. They become people that we admire. And so I just thought, if you haven't seen the movie about her, I highly, highly recommend it. It's called He Named Me Malala, and that's M like Mary, A-L-A-L-A. He Named Me Malala. It's on Amazon Prime. The two Snowden movies, if you haven't seen those yet, I highly recommend them as well. They're both on Prime. One is called Citizen 4. It won the Best Documentary Oscar in 2014. It was with featuring Glenn Greenwald and Laura Poitras. And they're the journalists who broke the story of the Snowden revelations, which were, world-changing. So that's also a must-watch. And then the other movie was called Snowden by Oliver Stone, and that's a reenactment of his story, which I found both of those extraordinarily powerful. If you haven't had a chance to see them, I highly recommend them because they're so inspiring. And Julian Assange, there are many movies about him. Honestly, I haven't seen them, but there's one that came out last year that I can't wait to see, and I couldn't find a way to get it. I don't know how you get it, but you can watch the trailer on YouTube and probably other platforms, but it's called The Trust Fall, Julian Assange. Again, it's called The Trust Fall, Julian Assange. And so if anybody can figure out how to get that movie, please let me know. I'd love to watch it. And the trailer is very compelling. So let's see. I just mainly wanted to share those with you because, as I said, they're all incredibly inspiring and uplifting. And if we're going to be entering this phase this year of Jupiter in Gemini, which is like this for over a year, I think it's important that we prepare ourselves, that we get inspired, that we support whistleblowers, we support people with courage, that we pray for them to help make the truth known. So this is a part of what our world is going to be going through in the next year or so. And we can participate, even if we're not a whistleblower. We can pray for them. We can pray for protection and courage for all whistleblowers and anybody who's working for universal peace. Okay, I think I've said everything I want to say. I'm going to unmute Stephanie again.
Do you want to move on to Saturn and Pisces? Or?
Yes, please. Speak about Saturn and Pisces.
Yeah, okay. Saturn continues to go through Pisces until May of next year. And Saturn is a complementary energy to Jupiter. Jupiter's expansion. Saturn is focus and concentration. It represents the limits of physical time and space. And by analogy, how we deal with the limits of being in a body, how we deal with time, having only 24 hours in a day, our priorities. And also, it's associated with Capricorn, as it rules the sign of Capricorn, deals with authority. What do we give our power to? What rules do we go along with? What do we consider to be the right thing, our sense of integrity? And how we define things again. So when it moves through Pisces, this is the 12th sign in the zodiac, the end of the archetypal cycle. It's very useful to look at the zodiac as an archetypal cycle of development with 12 stages. Each stage represents an important step. There's no one step better than another. Again, we're looking at a circle, a cycle that really has no beginning or end. The seasons go around and around, and we may prefer some parts of the year more than others, but they're still integral parts of that cycle. So by the time we get to Pisces, the last sign in the zodiac, this is about transcendence, about having walked a mile in everyone's moccasins, so to speak, of coming back to unity consciousness. Beginning in Aries, individuating, coming out of the oneness. And Pisces, we return to the oneness with full consciousness, hopefully. That's the end of the game, so to speak. And then we go back around for some more learning. So Saturn being about authority, responsibility, accountability in Pisces, looking at how we're defining our relationship with spirituality, with unity consciousness, with our divinity, with our intuition, with our sovereignty. Again, who are we giving our power to? Not that we can't have mentors, teachers, guides. We need those. But to ultimately rely on our inner guidance, on the wisdom of our heart. And so Saturn, as it moves through Pisces until next May, also asks us to look at where we still fall into victim consciousness, where we still sacrifice rather than serve from a sense of joy, where we still carry guilt and shoulds from our Judeo-Christian imprint, where we wrestle with the victim, martyr, savior, rescue archetypes, and looking at what is true for us at a much deeper level, what practices are working for us, and making time, Saturn, for our spiritual growth, making a schedule, making it an integral part of our daily life. So reclaiming our sovereignty and our divinity, our inner guidance, are key things continuing, always, but especially this year and into the spring of next year.
Stephanie, would you say that this time is essentially about redefining spirituality in a broad sense?
That certainly would, that would be that, and I think reclaiming our sovereignty are so key. We're coming out of the age of Pisces into the age of Aquarius, so that's another one of these transition zones that we're in. We'll talk about that with Pluto and Aquarius. And so the age of Pisces is characterized by Christ consciousness, not by Christianity, but Christ consciousness being the qualities of unconditional love, of unity consciousness, of a recognition of our interconnectedness, our inseparability, awakening from the illusion of separation, many ways to describe that. And the shadow side of Pisces is what we've seen, unfortunately, the devolving into killing in the name of Christ, killing in the name of God, of the codification of what is God, and the limitations of that. God, my God is better than your God, sort of thing. So having to come back to the original teachings, as I understand of Christ, of unconditional love and unity consciousness and forgiveness and acceptance that Malala, as you put it, embodies so beautifully. So yes, looking at that transition and reclaiming our power, because if we don't, we get in trouble in the next stage of development. Whatever stage, whatever sign we're in, requires a certain level of mastery and preparation to go to the next level. Just like, if you don't learn to read the alphabet, you can have trouble, in middle school, reading sentences and paragraphs. So getting somewhat skillful in one stage is a prerequisite for the next. And so Pisces is very much about reclaiming our power and sovereignty, so that when we go into the age of Aquarius, we don't give our power away to authority figures, technology, blindly, but that we hold our center and our spiritual core.
Okay, so talk about Pluto in Aquarius, please. Let's jump ahead.
Okay, so that's the big news this year. All right, so Pluto, the archetype of death and rebirth, the transformation of our evolutionary edges, of owning our power fully, of transmuting our shadow. All right, this is in mythology, he's the Lord of the underworld, representing our unconscious. So whatever sign Pluto is moving through is where we are doing some deep work, some deep exploration, some deep releasing, some deep transformation. While it was in Capricorn, which is from 2008 until this year, it was bringing up the shadow side of institutions, governments, regulations. In Capricorn, it connects very much with Saturn, so also about authority, about rules, what are the shoulds. We saw major changes, of course, when Pluto went into Capricorn, the huge government bailout, the economic crisis, what was called the Great Recession. So we often see big changes when planets are poised at the end of a sign and beginning the next sign. That's when we notice or things come most vividly forward in that transition zone. So now we're in another transition zone. Pluto has been dipping in and out of Aquarius already. Last spring it was in Aquarius for a few months. It retrograded back into Capricorn. Now yesterday it went into Aquarius again. Again in the fall it'll go back into Capricorn for just a couple months and then fully into Aquarius in November for the next 20 years. So we're still in this back and forth transition zone. And as it moves from Capricorn into Aquarius, the lens changes, the backdrop changes. And Aquarius is the 11th sign of the zodiac. Capricorn is the 10th. Essentially, Capricorn is about growing up, becoming mature, becoming self-reliant, self-sovereign, making our own choices based on our integrity and not on the shoulds, not on the conditioning, right? Aquarius, the next stage of development, is when we are able to collaborate, come together, what Leslie has beautifully called unity in diversity, where each person is allowed to be who they are, to recognize and contribute their unique gifts, and be part of a larger whole. So it's about the development of group consciousness, not in terms of loss of identity to the group, not being what the group wants, not sacrificing parts of ourselves in order to belong, but to individuate, to go beyond the shoulds of the 10th stage and the blind obedience to authority, if that's been an issue, and have acquired or developed a sense of inner authority. We know what's right. We don't need to be told what's right and wrong. We don't need to be told not to kill someone. We just know we don't want to do that because we feel our interconnectedness. Right? So Aquarius is about community, collaboration, connecting, about developing tolerance for differences, appreciation for differences, hopefully. And it also corresponds with technology. It's an air sign. Okay, in astrology there are 4 elements: earth, air, fire, and water. And the air signs deal with mental and social energy, with perception, like Gemini is the first air sign. There are 3 of each element. The first air sign is personal. The second air sign, which would be Libra, would be interpersonal. And the third air sign is collective or transpersonal. So Pluto in Aquarius also deals with collective ideas, ideologies, democracy, socialism, totalitarianism, our theories, our perceptions of how we perceive reality as a whole. And also with technology, how that shapes consciousness and shapes our lives. So as Pluto moves to Aquarius, we're going to see, the positive side would be political and social reform, increasing power given to the people rather than to the elite, a reduction in plutocracy and corporatocracy, the rule by the rich and the rule by corporations. So developing a sense of our common humanity, that we're all human beings on this amazing planet. And by coming together, there's a synergy, there's an exponential power that we have that is generated when we come together around an issue. We can change the world as we come together. Okay, but the key is getting past the division that's been promoted for so long, setting us against each other. Black versus white, different races, religions, and nationalities, all the different ways we divide ourselves. So recognizing our common humanity is a key to this, and reclaiming our power as a group, and working for progress and change that benefits all. That's the high road of Pluto and Aquarius. The shadow side will be, also there, and the challenges. The shadow side of Pluto Aquarius will be groupthink, blind obedience, losing ourselves, going along with things because that's what the group, or what the perceived group is wanting us to believe and do. And the shadow side of technology, losing our humanity, becoming so addicted to our devices that we no longer pay attention to our feelings, to our bodies, to our environment, to the earth itself. So the challenges are great, and the opportunities are great also. Some people are considering this to be coming the threshold of the age of Aquarius. We've all heard something about the age of Aquarius, right? And there are many markers for that. It's difficult to pinpoint because we're talking about really, again, a cycle. When you look at a circle, where do you put the beginning and end of a circle? Right? It's a continuity. There's no real ending and beginning in a circle or a cycle. So finding a marker can be tricky. But we can certainly say that we're in the transition zone of the age of Aquarius, and so the age of brotherhood, fraternity, of liberty for all, the freedom to be ourselves, and to be part of a larger whole with the consciousness that we all belong. We all have something to contribute. We're all human beings. Okay? If we haven't mastered the 10th stage, then we get in trouble in the 11th stage. Belonging and fitting in at any price, the dehumanization, and letting technology rule our lives completely. So we don't want that. So that's going to be our challenge. It's helpful to look back at the last time Pluto was in Aquarius. That goes back to the period of 1777 to 1798. And during that time, there were a number of very significant revolutions, right? We had our American Revolution in this country. There was the French Revolution also during that time period. And the Industrial Revolution was making huge changes in how we lived our lives. And as often is the case, at the beginning or in the middle of a change like this, we don't often see what the long-term effects will be because something is being seeded or just beginning. For example, when electricity was discovered, and someone might have said, oh, that's nice, I've got a little light bulb for my porch now, big deal. But to be able to see that, oh my God, that's going to change everything. It changes every part of our lives to have electricity or not have electricity. Right? So a lot of the inventions that were begun in the 1700s, that at the time the impacts were, reverberated for several hundred years, basically changing us from an agrarian world to an industrial, urban civilization for most of the world. Right? Most of the world now lives in cities. Most of us no longer grow our own food. We may have gardens, but the majority of us, live through these technological advances. So Pluto's last pass through Aquarius coincided with these major shifts in social and political changes and technology. So we can expect that again with Pluto now cycling through into Aquarius.
Is there anything you'd like to say about the possibility of the advances we might see in the coming time?
Yes. When Pluto dipped into Aquarius this last spring for a few months, we saw huge leaps in artificial intelligence, AI, which is now being used in every sector of our life, in government, healthcare, every, business, marketing. AI is making quantum leaps. It's been actually in development for many years, but since March of last year, it's taken quantum leaps. We can now, and it's available to almost everyone. You can subscribe, or there are free versions of it, and you can write books with it. You can create videos. You can create code. You can create robots. It's mind-blowing what's being available. Neuralink implants into brains now are making us into, we're being able to help people that have been paralyzed, help them to walk again. We have power chips in brains already being, experimented with. We have the first humanoid robot come online. You could buy, your first robot last spring, and it's only going to become more and more sophisticated. People are already worshiping android beings, that look like human beings, but they are programmed with AI to give spiritual responses to questions. There are churches now that have these automated processes in almost every faith already. So that's one area. Fusion. There's been huge developments in fusion technology. up to this point, when we discovered fission with the manufacturing of the atomic bomb in 1930, which incidentally was the discovery or coincided with the discovery of Pluto, we have nuclear reactors that we've been using for many years, but with huge toxic side effects and waste that lasts for millions of years. Fusion, which is putting atoms together rather than splitting them apart, is what the sun runs on. It's much more powerful, and its only waste byproducts are water, as I understand it. It has no toxic byproducts like the plutonium fission reactors. So once we harness fusion, that basically gives us virtually almost free energy, which will be a total game changer, will change everything in our society. And I know, Brad, you have a lot of knowledge about this, about how Nikola Tesla actually discovered a process that would be virtually few energy back in the mid-1800s and has been suppressed for many years. There's a lot of, you might want to share a little bit about that. But once we have fusion energy, that's going to change everything. There's also been huge developments recently in nano-electro-fuel flow batteries that are much safer than the existing batteries, more stable, long-lasting, very quickly and easily refilled, can be recharged from almost any source. So they're going to replace the problems that lithium batteries have, which have a long charge time, have some safety issues around dangers of fires, and a relatively short life. Those are just two examples, or three. AI and sources of energy in particular are going to be, I think, huge. There's huge developments in those fields coming very quickly in the next few years.
Thank you, Stephanie. I think for the sake of time, I'm looking at the time rather than my talk about energy. I'd like you to talk a little bit more about the shadow side of Pluto in Aquarius that we need to be aware of.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's sure. That's really important. Back in 1949, just after World War II, George Orwell published a very important book called 1984, which I think is still worth reading for these times. It was a novel based in a novel form, but he warned of the dangers of a technologically advanced totalitarian government that ruled through fear, surveillance, and propaganda. He coined the term Big Brother that we still use today, the Ministry of Truth, which altered historical records, the Thought Police, which punished any form of questioning or rebellion. And unfortunately, we're seeing this now. We have seen this, especially since 2020, which was also a Saturn-Pluto conjunction. Orwell wrote this book during the previous Saturn-Pluto conjunction, Saturn being about control, authority, Pluto about the shadow and unconscious manipulation. We had another Saturn-Pluto conjunction in 2020, amplified by Jupiter, also in Capricorn. So again, a lot of restriction, control, censorship, limitations on what was acceptable to say and not say, a lot of wiping things off the internet, a lot of rewriting of biographies and what was truth. So it's become ever increasingly easy to change records. All it needs is a few keystrokes, and someone is out of Wikipedia, out of off the web. No longer that information is no longer accessible. Google is the major search engine. There are other search engines, but Google definitely has censored many things. I've noticed that I stopped using Google myself because it censors so much. What comes in the first top 10 is usually what people only look at, and if you don't make it in those top 10 or anything further, it's lost. So there's a tremendous amount of censorship and restriction of free speech that is very disturbing, and Pluto in Aquarius will hopefully bring to light and help us become more aware of the dangers of that. And again, makes it increasingly important to be exposed to a wide variety of sources and to ultimately trust our inner truth meter, what feels right, what is empowering, rather than fear producing. Fear contracts us. It literally makes us dumber. It puts us into our reptilian brain. When we're in fear, we drop out of our cortex, which is the part of our brain that can rationally think and reason and logically discern. And when we're in fear, we go into our more primitive limbic system, which is our fight or flight response. And so we're literally in a reduced consciousness when we're in fear. And so I know I've stopped I used to be an avid listener of NPR. I loved NPR. I listened to it all the time. I barely listen to it, and I listen to the special programs they have. But I don't listen to the news. Even that has been greatly controlled and has been promoting a lot of fear-based news, quote unquote. So being very discerning, super discerning about what we expose ourselves to. There's many sources on the internet that can be also sources of news, or much wider bandwidth of what is news and less bias. So being aware and mindful of what is opinion, what is bias, what is fact. We really have to rely on our inner guidance and our inner truth meter more and more.
That is critical, and I talk about that often on these calls, and I'm so glad to hear you say that Pluto in Aquarius is going to bring that to the forefront. It's one of the most important things, I think, and it's really the spiritual lesson, as you said. It's about practicing our discernment.
Mm-hmm.
Stephanie, could you please talk about this subject, perspective of power and the struggle for power? What's that going to look like in this astrology?
Well, with Pluto in Aquarius, it's about the power of the collective. Many years ago, in 1990, the Singing Revolution is a beautiful example. If anyone hasn't seen that documentary about Estonia, who literally sang their way to freedom. They were overtaken by the Soviet Union under Soviet rule for many years. They defied the ban on singing their traditional folk songs. They came together in choruses of up to, I believe, 250,000 people. So many that they couldn't be arrested, right? And so they came together and they sang their folk songs, rekindling their collective spirit. And ultimately, they were granted their freedom without a drop of blood being shed. So things like that, things that bring us together, that help us pool our resources, our talents, our power to bring social change, right, through whatever cause we believe in, whether it's for human rights, to eliminate human trafficking, to bring education to all people, to deal with climate change. And there's so many issues that we're facing that we have the power to change if we come together and express our collective will to do so. Right? We've become increasingly ruled by very few rich people. Corporations have the power legally and have the protections of an individual. Those were granted many years ago, and that has enabled them to do things that are extremely destructive for the collective, to serve the interests of the few versus the many. So Pluto in Aquarius impels us to come together, to transcend our superficial differences around race and gender and religion and so on, and come back to our common humanity and work for the benefit of the good for all, not just for the few.
Lovely. Is there anything else about Pluto and Aquarius that you'd like to share with us before we move on to a couple other things?
I think those are the kind of highlights. Yeah.
If anybody wants more information on that, you should get Stephanie's 2024 forecast. It's brilliant, and it's got more. But Stephanie, I also found your information about the United States Chiron return very interesting. Would you like to speak about that a little bit?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we haven't talked about Chiron. Orbits between Saturn and Uranus, between the limits of time and space that Saturn represents, and the gateway to the metaphysical, the transpersonal that Uranus represents. So it represents a bridging energy. It's a centaur in mythology, so it's also a bridging energy symbolized by being half human and half horse, half mortal and half divine. So a bridging between what separates us, what separates spirit and matter, essentially, to reconnecting, to going back toward our unitive consciousness. And is often considered the archetype of the wounded healer. To heal essentially is to make whole. The word heal and whole come from the same cognate. heal, whole, hail, all derived from the same word. So whatever sign Chiron is moving through is offering support to heal core issues in that sign. Chiron's been moving through Aries. This country, the United States, was born with Chiron in Aries. And on a personal level, Chiron is about the right to initiate, the right to exist, the right to have a will, the right to go after what we want, the freedom to be an individual. Its shadow side can be in one of two extremes, where we are so conditioned and disempowered that we feel we have no right, not even to exist, not to speak up, not to say anything, not to have any power at all. Its flip side, or the other side of that shadow, is to be aggressive, violent, to misuse power, to be so self-absorbed that we impose our will on others. With the United States, it's complicated. If we use the July 4th, 1776 birth date for this country, every 50 years, the United States gets what's called a Chiron return, meaning Chiron has made one orbit around the solar system, around the sun, and is coming back, returning to where it was when the country was born, giving us a big check-in time. Again, it's a spiral. We're completing one 50-year cycle and are being presented with the opportunity to go to the next level. So to advance, not to continue, hopefully, in the same patterns, but to go to the next level. So to go to the next level and how this country uses power, how it uses its individual energy, its will, its use of force. And another level of Aries is the sacred masculine, to heal the wounded warrior, from which violence comes. When we feel disempowered, when we're in fear, we tend to project and lash out. It's a very natural but lowly evolved human response to stress, to being in survival. So healing the wounds of trauma, especially the wounds from war, it's in our collective psyche, it's in our bones, it's in our ancestral DNA. So doing deep healing work for ourselves is transformative. It ripples out. It not only heals us, it helps heal the generations past, and it helps the generations to come.
So I remember hearing you say it's a little bit like rewriting the masculine, and I love that.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Rewriting the way we use force or power.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Beautiful. Would you like to talk about space weather?
Yes, space weather is very important. It's something that I noticed experientially first. I would suddenly sometimes feel very sleepy or discombobulated, and my guidance led me to start checking the space weather. It almost invariably coincided with a solar flare. I go, oh, that's interesting. And so I started reading about how important solar flares are and solar activity. There are these cycles. The sun has its cycle, like everything else. It reverses its magnetic field approximately every 11 years, and it has a peak in solar activity about every 11 years. And the more solar flares and coronal mass ejections, the more, you could say, these emissions of solar energy, the more they impact. They have several impacts. On a physical level, they impact power grids, satellites, telecommunications, GPS navigation. On a more subtle level, they impact us physiologically on our bodies. There have been correspondences with it impacts our nervous system, our cardiac system, our DNA. It's been shown to alter DNA and consciousness. So solar activity is very catalyzing. There were studies that have shown that at peak times of solar activity, which we're coming into this year, correspond with significant historical events. There was Alexander Chivesky, if I'm pronouncing his name right, studied the history of 72 countries from 500 BCE through the beginning of the 1900s and found that 80% of the most significant events, revolutions, wars, migrations, democratic and social reforms, pandemics, occurred within a few years of maximum sunspot activity. Okay, which is very interesting. So we're now in solar system or solar cycle 25, which was originally predicted to peak in 2025, but is now expected to peak this year. So we're getting more solar flares, more of these highly ionized particles that impact our Earth's magnetic field. They cause geomagnetic storms, which impact anything that runs on power. And then that in turn impacts our electromagnetic field. Okay? So if we occasionally feel a little weird, discombobulated, this could stir up also shadow material as well. Then it's important to take care of ourselves. You know, if we're feeling unusually tired, if we can, to rest more, stay hydrated, you know, stay more grounded. Ground, literally, if we can get out into nature, if that works, or, you know, any way we can connect with nature, that's a natural way to stay grounded and help integrate. These are basically upgrades in consciousness, right? They're cosmic downloads coming through the sun from beyond our solar system. But our sun is like it's often called the central sun, or the central focalization of all these other energies. We're not just receiving sunlight, which is big and important of itself, but we're receiving light from many different sources, other galaxies of the star system, and the sun focalizes that. The planets focalize those as well. So it's a conduit for these transcendent energies that help evolve our consciousness. So they're very important. And we can't predict them at this point, other than we know that the sun has this 11-year cycle and that we're coming into a peak this year. But we don't know from day to day when there's going to be a big solar flare. NASA and other agencies track the space weather very closely because they can literally knock satellites out of the sky and impact the weather. The International Space Station and astronauts are very susceptible to solar flares that can be very damaging to the cells at that altitude. Right? So they're very important for a number of reasons, and I believe they definitely are accelerating our evolution as well.
Stephanie, would you like to offer any advice for people about how to handle this exponential growth that's coming in 2024?
Well, to stay as grounded, it's going to be, of course, different for everyone. But in general, some kind of spiritual practice is absolutely vital. Some part of the day where we tune out everything external and turn inward. However, we do that with meditation, yoga, gardening, time in nature, mantra, guided meditations. There's a gazillion ways to do it, but essentially to give ourselves some inner time, some soul time to reconnect with our higher self, our inner guidance, whatever grounds us, in terms of connecting literally with the earth, or with the meditation that you offer in the beginning of grounding with the core of the earth, grounding with, the core of the galaxy or our higher self. Our breath, of course, is always immediately available. Taking a deep breath, slowing our breath. Whenever we start catching ourselves revving up, feeling anxious, to literally slow our breathing, shifts us from our sympathetic nervous system to our parasympathetic, from the fight and flight response to back into our cortex. So just simply having our out-breath slower than our in-breath, taking our in-breath and then lengthening our out-breath, will shift our consciousness. So we can do that anytime, anywhere. That's always, I just have to remember to notice and catch that and do that. So grounding, spiritual practice, and being super discerning, very careful as to what we let into our consciousness, what we read, what we watch, what we give our attention to. Money is being made by our attention, right? Money, and our attention determines our experience of reality. So just being very judicious about what we give our attention to, being very mindful, and of course very heartful, whatever helps open and heal our heart. And to continue to do our shadow work, our clearing. The more that we do that, that widens the path for others to follow, that ripples out into the world as well. Oh, and trusting our inner guidance. I think I mentioned that, but yeah, really, really, really always tuning in and seeing, how does this feel? Does this resonate? Does this ring true to me? Does this empower me? Or does this cause me to contract in fear?
Beautiful. Thank you, Stephanie. That's very wise and prudent advice. Do you have any closing remarks you'd like to share?
Just that it's helpful to remember the big picture. And I ended my yearly forecast with this. I won't read it, but Joanna Macy speaks of the Shambhala prophecy, where in Tibetan Buddhism there is this prophecy of, when the earth is in great danger, spiritual warriors will be called forth to do two things, to hold wisdom and compassion, and they're both necessary. Wisdom and insight, to have the knowledge of what's going on, but then also the compassion and understanding to hold that with acceptance, with grace, with understanding on a higher level. Right? So to find the strength and the courage to arise to this time of challenge, and to know that we were born for these times. We came to be here on planet Earth to participate in this shift of consciousness. It's a very exciting time and a great grace to be alive at this time in human history. So to honor that as best we can.
Oh, beautiful. Thank you so much, Stephanie. I'm so grateful that you joined us today. Thank you for taking all this time to share with us your wisdom and your insights and your love.
My pleasure. My pleasure. Thank you for having me and for the work that you do so much, Joy.
Thank you. Well, I'm going to mute you, and then I'm going to just read a little bit about some ways that people can find out more about your work or work with you directly. Okay, so if you're interested in learning more about astrology or working with Stephanie, here's what she offers. There's a few things I'm going to read. Eco-astrology new and full moon forecasts, which cover the current astrological shifts, along with helpful links and resources, written every 2 weeks, and they're available by email, by subscription on a sliding scale. She's very, very generous. So if you can't afford it, she does work with you. But I highly, highly recommend the subscriptions. I'm in the subscription program, and it's excellent. Number 2, as I said earlier, her 2024 yearly forecast. It includes a 2-hour recording plus 6 pages of handouts on the major alignments of the year and how to work with them. Number 3, she also teaches astrology and does readings, and that information is detailed on her website at ecoastrology.com on the classes and sessions pages. Number 4, her website also has several articles, videos, and ebooks, and details of those are on the books and the articles page. And lastly, number 5, there are presentations on her website, especially around spiritual awakening and Neptune and lunar nodes, which is about the spiritual path and all kinds of other things. So you'll find a lot there at ecoastrology.com. Highly recommended. And once again, thank you, Stephanie, for joining us today. Just so grateful. So the thing, we're almost out of time, and I have to choose whether we're going to talk about fear versus joy or questions. I think I'd like to share with you the fear versus joy piece, and we'll have to skip questions today. I'm so sorry, but we'll bring them over to next month. We'll bring the questions over. So if you sent in a question and didn't get answered, you can look for that next month. My apologies about that, but this was important. So what I wanted to talk about today is fear versus joy, because if all of this talk about exponential growth and change made you feel a little bit afraid, which is natural, I think it's just really important to recognize that and to honor any part of you that might be feeling a little afraid. And there's nothing unusual about that, with all the uncertainty and formlessness that comes with change. The ego is going to feel that way. The ego is synonymous with control. So anytime the ego hears that word change, it fears its death. And anytime the ego even smells, it's a whiff of a hint of change, coming around a corner, then it's going to feel some kind of trepidation. So I think it's super important right now to just be aware of this. Beware of fear. Fear is also being ramped up more than ever by the forces of separation, we can call them. Fear of so many things, there's a list, war, the economy crashing, pandemics, the end of the world, and on and on and on the list goes. But you hear all these things, and they're inviting fear. And so all of that, in addition to just the nature of the ego, fearing uncertainty and change, and just fearing the unknown, all of that, it adds up to ramping up our witnessing practice around fear. And I think as we practice witnessing all that fear, it's helpful to remember that nothing's wrong. There's a perfection to all of this, perfection to the changes, perfection to the challenges we're going to face. Change simply means that the old way is dying and the new way is being born. So even if it looks a little bit messy, it's still okay. And I think also it's important to remember that we're not victims. We are powerful. We are amazing, resourceful beings, and this is our time to step into our power, as Stephanie was talking about. It's going to be supported by the astrology, and it's that old adage that life is being done for us, not to us, right? It's a much more empowering approach to change, to see the gifts and to look for the opportunities in the change rather than feeling the loss and feeling the victimization of it and focusing on that. So it's time. It's time to face the fears. It's just time to face fears and let them go. And we all know that when we look fear in the face, it evaporates. I think it was Winston Churchill, right, that said we have nothing to fear but fear itself. And that is so apropos for our times. So witnessing. One of the primary practices right now can be witnessing fear. And also specifically, I wanted to mention worry. Sometimes we don't connect worry with fear, but that's what worry is. Worry is just a small fear. And we know that worry is like praying for the thing you don't want. So rather than that, we need to use our energy to focus on what we want. If you've read our book, Returning to Oneness, The 7 Keys of Ascension, you remember that the 8th key is don't worry, be happy. And I know that can sound like a cliche, but the truth is that it's actually one of the most powerful spiritual aphorisms ever. It's not not just a popular reggae song by Bobby McFerrin, although it's a great song. Mayor Baba, the great spiritual teacher from the 1900s, he said that. And interestingly, he said it to his Western students. Did you know that? He wasn't addressing his Eastern students. He was addressing his Western students because he noticed that they were worried most of the time. And I think it's a Western thing that we're indoctrinated into worry. We're taught that to worry is to love, and that's the opposite of the truth. And practicing don't worry, be happy is much easier said than done, actually. And I just wonder, how many of you have really focused on practicing don't worry, be happy? I felt like today I wanted to throw out a challenge to you. I challenge everyone who's listening to this call to practice don't worry, be happy for the next month. And then I'd like to talk about it again when we have our call next month, at the end of February. I would like to hear how you do with it. And if you need any tips on it, there's a whole chapter on it in the Returning to Oneness book. You can refresh your memory by reading that chapter again. I can tell you personally, it has been one of my main practices for many years now. For at least 8 years, I've been focused on that practice. Don't worry, be happy. And I'm happy to say I've made a lot of progress. I don't worry about anything anymore. And it's a big deal, I can tell you. I'm a much, much happier person. I think also in the Returning to Oneness book, I think we mention, I can't remember if we do in the book or not, but joy and worry are opposites. You can have one, but not the other in any given moment. Joy and worry are opposites. So calling in joy and releasing worry is one of the most extremely beneficial things we can do right now. And it's amazing how it can change your life. And I've said this many times before, but it's always worth a reminder that joy is the highest manifestation of the spiritual path. And I want to repeat that. It's one of the most important teachings I've ever received, so I just want to make sure I'm sharing it properly with you and that you hear it. Joy is the highest manifestation of the spiritual path. And this doesn't mean that if you're experiencing grief or a severe depression or you're affected by war or something terrible, that you need to stop and experience joy. That's not what I'm saying. I know it's hard when you're experiencing troubles. It's difficult to just jump into joy. I'm not saying that's what this is about. I'm just saying that joy is a very natural state for us as humans. And when the grief is complete, when we're out of trauma, it's super important to remember to shift our awareness back to joy. And if you're not in trauma and you're not in a war, you're not in a depression, then it's a great time to do this practice that I'm talking about. Practice being in joy. It's the highest vibration there is, and it's such a gift. So I think that's a good place to stop for today. We've only got a few minutes left. So please let me know how that goes for you. I'd love to hear from you if you do practice this. And I'd like to invite you now. And again, I apologize. We're not going to get to questions today. There's some excellent questions, and two, in fact, that I wanted to bring up. But we'll get to them next time. So I invite you now, as we close out for today, to stop multitasking if you're able to. I know that's often what people need to do when we listen to these kind of calls. So I invite you to just pause and sit down somewhere quiet and peaceful and just get comfortable. And take a few long, slow breaths and close your eyes. And just let go. Long and slow and deep breathing. I know that sometimes all the talking stirs a lot of shadow up for us. And so it's always good to just get quiet and breathe and tune back into this energy, this field of love that we generate together, which is surrounding us right now. Breathing in the love, breathing out any stress or tension or fear in the body. Breathing in joy and breathing out worry. Nothing is wrong. Everything is perfect just the way it is. Breathing in, embracing the unknown. Breathing out fear of the unknown. Breathing in, embracing uncertainty. And breathing out the need for control. Breathing in, embracing change. And breathing out any fear of change. And we call on Great Spirit, Divine Mother, Father God, the Self that we all are. We call on all of our highest teachers, guides, angels, all the beings who surround us in the highest love and support. We invite you into this space, and we offer our gratitude. Thank you for the blessings of this life. Thank you for a strong witness. Thank you for helping us to remember life is being done for us, not to us. Thank you for strengthening our courage and strengthening our foundation of deep, deep peace and relaxation. And now as we sit together in this beautiful state of unity, peace and love and joy, we offer a prayer once again for peace for our planet, for an end to war on our planet. Please make us instruments of your peace. Where there is war, let us sow peace and love. And please, we call for protection and courage and inspiration for all those who are working for universal peace on this planet. Courage for the whistleblowers, protection for the whistleblowers, and all the people in government and positions of power. Please bless and protect and inspire everyone working for universal peace. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. And Alalaho. Isn't it wonderful? So I invite you now to, you can either stay in meditation if you have time, if you'd like to stay, and if not, I invite you to gently bring your awareness back into your body and slowly begin to move and open your eyes when you're ready. And I just want to thank you all one more time. Thank you so much for joining today. I so appreciate your presence, your love, your support of this field that we create together, this field of love. And I wish you so many blessings and so much love for the month ahead. And I will look forward to seeing you again in a month's time. Don't forget to give me feedback, send in questions, courses@corelight.org, send in sharing, whatever you care to share. I'd love to hear from you. Thank you. Love you. Bye for now.